Our Europe Bureau Chief Jeff Semple has a front row seat in Moscow. Jeff?
Well, Donna, take a look at this impressive fireworks display lighting up the sky over Red Square and marking the end of Victory Day. A deafening display of patriotism and power. Well, this march is just underway and already things are getting tense. Police shoving some of the protesters and now taunting each other here in the middle of the street. Well, we are witnessing a very tense, very improvised exercise in crowd control. As you can see, Austrian authorities are allowing thousands of refugees up these steps one at a time where they can board these trains bound for Munich. And here she comes. The 90-year-old can be forgiven for not walking the entire stretch. She's opted instead to go for a drive, as you can see, greeting thousands of royal watchers who have lined the street here for kilometers, even at 90, keeping calm and carrying on. America's most wanted computer analyst is seemingly on the run again today. Officials here in Washington are scrambling to track the movements of 30-year-old Edward Snowden, and it seems they're not getting much help from their international allies. This is one of the final front lines against the so-called Islamic State here in Iraq, with ISIS positions just a couple of kilometers from here, and the battle for Hawija has just gotten underway. The West Bank is once again filled with fire and smoke here this morning. We're just down the street from Manger Square in the city of Bethlehem. And here's another sign of a conflict that's frozen in time. This is the DMZ, the demilitarized zone that separated the North and the South for the past 65 years. But recently, the DMZ has become a tourist attraction, with paying customers lining up to visit here. South Koreans may have gotten used to living in the crosshairs of their next-door neighbor, but the North's arsenal just went nuclear. Now, Chief, these recent shootings have happened at public gatherings, and it's that really seems to have people concerned, regardless of which neighborhood they live in. You're charged with keeping them safe, so what do you tell them? Iraq's war against the so-called Islamic State is nearly over, but the battle scars are brutal. For 2 years, this town in northern Mosul was ISIS territory. Now, 10 months since the Kurds took it back, there, amidst the ruins, a vendor is selling vegetables. When I first returned, it was frightening, he says, but things are slowly starting to get back to normal. This Yazidi family fled ISIS 3 years ago and finally moved back home just last week to find their house looted but intact. They survived ISIS, but now worry about the repercussions from yesterday's Kurdish referendum. We live in the disputed territories claimed by both Kurdistan and Iraq, he says, so we will be one of the first people affected if civil war breaks out. The battle for Mosul forced more than 1 million people to flee their homes. Families, many with young children, who are now packed into refugee camps like this one that are scattered right across the countryside. In this camp north of Mosul, we met the Maji Hamid family, including 11-year-old Malik, a future pop star. The family has been living in this crouch tent for nearly a year. When ISIS attacked their home in Mosul, they lost everything, including their mother. Someone reported to ISIS that my wife was a Shia Muslim, he says, so ISIS took her out and executed her. ISIS has now lost nearly all of its territory in Iraq, but many of these families are too afraid to return home.
Most of the IDPs who are here have been traumatized by ISIS.
Around 3 million Iraqis are now refugees in their own country. This camp is running short on medical supplies, including those needed to treat the most vulnerable. This baby was born in the camp 2 weeks ago, inheriting a war-ravaged country whose future is uncertain at best. And yesterday's referendum result is only adding to that uncertainty and stoking fears of civil war.
We begin with Jeff Semple and the investigation. Jeff?
Well, Donna, this country spent the weekend bracing for the possibility of another attack. But today, the French people went back to their normal routines, and French authorities went on the offensive. Police raided nearly 200 homes across France and Belgium, seizing dozens of weapons, including a rocket launcher. They arrested more than 20 people, but not Europe's most wanted man, 26-year-old Salah Abdeslam from Belgium, the only of the 8 attackers who not only survived, but managed to escape. One of Abdeslam's brothers blew himself up in the attack. Another, Mohammed, was arrested but released.
Je ne sais pas vous dire pourquoi.
I can't tell you why my brothers did what they did, he told reporters. We're an open-minded family. We've never had any trouble with the law. My parents are in shock. Well, Mohammed's brothers carried out the attack. Investigators reportedly believe this was the man who planned it. Abdelhamid Aboud, a 27-year-old from the same Belgian neighborhood as the Abdeslam brothers. He's believed to be in Syria working for ISIS. In a recent interview with the militant's magazine, Aboud boasted of planning terrorist strikes and called for attacks on several countries, including Canada. Security has now opened the street in front of the Bataclan concert hall, the site of Friday's worst massacre. And they posted a sign out front that reads, "Liberty is an indestructible monument." This morning, the French people seemed determined to prove it. After the deadly weekend, Parisians tried to return to their normal routines, back to school and work, and to restaurants, places whose vulnerabilities were made clear in Friday's attack.
We're scared, but we know we have to fight back, and the only way to fight back is to keep on living the way we live.
At noon, the city froze for a moment of silence to remember the 129 victims.
It's a terrible event, and most of us know someone who was in this area or who was directly at the Bataclan, this concert hall.
At this restaurant, they lost a colleague. At the Bataclan concert hall, Armel Dupuis lost a friend.
I am not afraid, but I am angry. And I would like to punish this man.
The French president vowed to do just that.
La France est en guerre.
France is at war, declared François Hollande. He promised more raids and more airstrikes targeting ISIS in Syria. François Hollande plans to meet with the U.S. and Russian presidents to discuss ramping up the fight against ISIS. And France will remain in a state of emergency with heightened security for at least the next 3 months, Donna. It's one of the hottest tickets at the Winter Olympic Games. Not a sporting event, but a musical performance by an orchestra from North Korea. This event so popular, 150,000 South Koreans entered a lottery desperate for a seat.
I think it's very historical event.
The orchestra is part of a North Korean delegation that includes dancers, singers, and more than 200 cheerleaders. Analysts call it a Trojan horse.
The assumption is, on the North Korean side, that people will see this musical group and say, wow, this is wonderful, North Koreans aren't that bad.
If North Korea was hoping for a propaganda coup with this performance, it appears to have worked. But the North Koreans aren't the only ones using music to win hearts and minds.
좋은 노래라고 평할 때 가장
Show Me Young is a radio host based in South Korea, but her listeners live outside the country.
일단 저희가 북한에 있는
Our main audience is teenagers and young people in North Korea, she says. Show Me used to be one of them. She grew up in North Korea and even performed in a propaganda art troupe like the one at the Olympics. But 10 years ago, Show Me escaped North Korea. She says she'd heard stories about what life was like in the South by listening to illegal radio broadcasts that contained perhaps South Korea's greatest propaganda weapon. K-pop, short for South Korean pop music, is as cheesy as it is catchy and popular. Particularly K-pop's greatest hit.
Gangnam Style.
Gangnam Style was the first YouTube video to ever receive more than 1 billion views. Seoul is home to not one, but 2 Gangnam Style monuments. Its popularity largely due to its unorthodox dance.
Hi, nice to meet you. I'm Jeff. I'm a terrible dancer.
We stopped by a K-pop dance studio.
손을 이렇게 X 이렇게 만들어서 이렇게.
For a quick demonstration.
My hips don't move. That's the problem.
Gangnam Style.
And explanation of what makes Gangnam Style so popular.
네, 거의 이제 주로 사랑 이야기가 많고.
K-pop songs focus a lot on love, she says. Gangnam Style is about this guy yearning after this girl. It's about how to enjoy life and have fun.
I don't have Gangnam Style.
And in the most isolated country on earth, these songs offer a glimpse to the outside world.
북한이라는 사회는 굉장히
The only music in North Korea is pro-government propaganda, she says. In North Korea, you're taught to suppress your feelings. They don't have songs about your emotions, your sadness and joy. Making K-pop propaganda a threat to the North Korean regime. Jeff Semple, Global News, Gangneung, South Korea.